During the Middle Ages, long after Christianity had spread throughout Europe, the great theologians and thinkers of the time began to discuss among themselves, how can Christ be present in bread and wine? How can that be? We can't comprehend it. And in truth, we cannot comprehend it completely. We live by faith, not by rational explanation. But the more important question is not how can Christ be present in the bread and wine of the Eucharist, but what does it mean? What is the meaning of this great thing that God has given us through Christ? What is Christ accomplishing by being really present among us in the elements of bread and wine? That's the more important question. And the answer to that question is simple. Christ wants to become really present in us. Whenever we hear the word real presence, we automatically think of the Eucharist. But the real presence that Jesus seeks is in you and in me, his disciples. But there is even a more important question. The question of why does Jesus want to be so intimately present in us and does through this food of bread and wine? Jesus did not give us the Holy Eucharist, the Blessed Sacrament as we call it, for reservation in our tabernacles, although that's a very good thing that we do because we are then enabled to take communion to those who cannot come to Mass, the homebound and the sick. The primary purpose that Jesus had in giving us the Eucharist is that he could be really present in us. The Eucharist comes to us in the form of food. Food is the source of life. We cannot live without it. We cannot grow without it. We cannot mature without it. And when Jesus gives us himself to us in the way of food, he wants to grow in us, to mature in us, and to eventually give us unending life. A few weeks ago, we celebrated the ascension of Jesus, his physical return to the Father. But Jesus is continuously present, doing what he did then, teaching, healing, soothing, liberating from sin. He continues to do that as he did then, but he's doing it now through us, his body. As St. Paul says, the body of Christ is what you are. Christ is really more present now in the world than he was then, because in those days he was bound by the physical human limitations of time and space. You cannot be in more places than one. You cannot be over a long period of time because human life is relatively short. Yet because of his union with us, his communion in us, through our being continually nourished by his body and blood, he is able to be everywhere, all of the time, for all the ages. In these recent days, many of us have been temporarily deprived of this communion in the Eucharistic mystery. We have been unable to go to Holy Communion. But we have never been deprived of the real presence of Christ, because the real presence is in us. I am with you always, he said. And Paul, speaking for Jesus about the bread and the wine of the Eucharist, said to us, you are the body of Christ, member for member. May Holy Communion, of which we are now temporarily deprived, bring us to a greater appreciation of who we really are. We are the body of Christ. We are the presence of Christ, continuously nourished by the bread and the wine of the Eucharist. May Jesus accomplish in us all that he wishes to accomplish. May he be able to continue his work in this world through us who are in holy communion with him through the bread and wine of the Eucharist.